Ladies and gentlemen, seekers of light and secret knowledge wherever you may be, you are listening to Points of Light Radio, the podcast dedicated to taking you past the apron and behind the closed doors of lodges everywhere. And here is your host, Stan Miller.
Greetings, brothers and sisters. Shalom, assalamu alaikum, adnastana. Pleasure to be back with you here on this cold day. I'm going to stay inside for a little bit. Finish this coffee. I've got another one sitting in there. But my guest today is a gentleman named Mike Duminiak. Now, if you recall him, he was here a couple years back in a previous segment of Points of Light Radio where he spoke about his membership in the International Order of Odd Fellows, right, as a military advisor to the Patriarchs Militant USA. Well, today, Mr. Duminiak is here to discuss a book he recently wrote called Oddtistic, right? I had a bit of a chat with him over Facebook, and right, this being a fraternal podcast, as you might guess, Oddtistic is a fraternally based book about, sounds like, odd fellowship and some things that the odd fellows are doing. But you know what? I'm not going to try to explain this all to you, right? Because that's what he's here for. So, right, I love interviewing book authors, right? Especially these fraternal book authors. So, right, let's let Mr. Duminiak explain this book to you, right? So, trim your lamps, brothers and sisters. Follow me. Mr. Duminiak, welcome back to Points of Light Radio.
Thank you for having me back. I enjoy being here.
Yeah. Now, you are the Deputy Grand Master and Grand Secretary Emeritus of the Pennsylvania International Order of Odd Fellows, right? And you've been here before. Give us a quick introduction to yourself.
Sure. I joined the order in Pennsylvania in 2006, and a few years back, I moved from my work to West Virginia, and I transferred to a lodge here in Charleston, Canal Lodge number 25, and then I transferred to the encampment here, which was Elenipsco number 13, and we did not have a canton or a Rebecca Lodge in Charleston, West Virginia. They had both closed, so I worked and got those restarted and restarted the canton back in 2019 and restarted the Rebecca Lodge in 2024. So now we have all the branches again, which I'm happy about. I served as department commander of the Department Council of West Virginia for the Patriarchs Militant. I served as the Grand Secretary of the Grand Lodge of West Virginia, and now I'm the Deputy Grand Master of the Grand Lodge. And I've served in various capacities as an appointed officer of the General Military Council for the Patriarchs Militant internationally, and also as an appointed officer of the Sovereign Grand Lodge. Most recently, I was the Sovereign Grand Chaplain for 2024-2025.
And in addition to those titles, you now can put yourself down as an Odd Fellow book author. And you're here specifically tonight to talk about your new book called, I believe it's called Oddtistic.
Oddtistic, yes. Oddtistic. Yeah, I've written a number of books, but so far this is only this was the first one that was published. That's an Oddfellow related book. I do have another one that is probably not as interesting for other people here. That's the Chaplain's Guide that explains the role of the chaplain, which I wrote when I was Sovereign Grand Chaplain. But Oddtistic is a completely different book. And the idea of the book is to explain why so many people from marginalized communities, people with neurodivergence, people with backgrounds in addiction or broken homes or loss, post-traumatic stress, all of that, why so many of them have joined the Oddfellows over the years, and what it is about that organization that makes it such a good fit for people that generally don't fit in. And it's really kind kind of amazing that an organization with the name of Odd Fellows would actually do so well for real, being a home for people who are a little bit on the odd side.
But we've talked about this before, though, that the Oddfellows originally was set up for people who didn't fit in with any of your traditional Freemason, free gardeners, free fishermen. It didn't fit in any of those, because those were set up as people with occupations. Oddfellows were, I think you told me before, that were set up for people who really didn't fit in any of those occupations, who didn't have those. So they had no place to go, and that's why they formed this Odd Fellow. They were odd men out type thing.
Exactly. It was all the different odd jobs and everything, and they formed the Odd Fellows to be able to have basically a support structure that would give them the kind of things that you would get from a trade union or a guild that they didn't have access to. And so that's where you get the Odd Fellows coming. But a lot of that was very much economic. I mean, yes, there was a lot of fraternity involved and friendship, but what was attractive to the class of people, the great masses of people, was that they had no economic power and no economic security. And belonging to the lodge gave them that. It also gave them a sense of purpose and gave them a chance to hold leadership roles and make a difference in the community. So it did a whole lot of extra wonderful things, but a lot of it was economics. These days, yes, there is economic inequality, but because of social safety nets, because of unemployment benefits, minimum wages, and all sorts of things like that, even people who are struggling are not entirely helpless the way they would have been in the 19th century. Unless, of course, maybe you're homeless or so. That could be a different instance, right there. But people are still odd ones out for other reasons. So if it's not economic, now it's because of being autistic or other type of neurodivergence or hyperactive attention deficit or gender identity issues or previous history of alcoholism or drug addiction, coming from a broken home where you had no structure in your home, having suffered trauma, having suffered loss by having a spouse or a close family member pass away, leaving you alone. And sometimes, you know what, there's no reason for it. You have the people who are just quietly out of society and don't fit in, and there's nothing that you can point to that you can say, oh, you don't fit in because, you're neurodivergent, or you don't fit in because you're from a marginalized community. No, some people just don't feel connected to society for no particular reason.
But that's all one thing. Being marginalized or feeling outside of society. But why would they not feel like they have had a place, or why would some of these lodges they tried to join feel that they were kind of outside what they were looking for?
Well, the thing is, when they join the Oddfellows, they don't feel like they're on the outside. And I think it's just
But do you think the other ones are doing that? They're making them feel like,
well, I think it depends. Like I only belong to the Masons and the Pythians in addition to the Oddfellows, so I can only speak about those.
okay.
But for example, the Masons are more popular, and people do a lot of stuff with them. But first of all, if you're a woman, you're out of luck. So let's just go ahead and write off half the population right there. And depending on where you are in the country, your race makes a difference on whether or not you're going to go into a Masonic lodge. I'm from Pennsylvania originally. It's not an issue in Pennsylvania, but it is in other parts of the United States. They have, if you're African American, you can't join the regular Masonic lodge. You have to join the Prince Hall Lodge still. There's also some issues with, people who have, sexual orientation differences that sometimes that's a problem. Sometimes people's religious background is a problem. And at the same time, yes, there's a wonderful sense of fraternity in the Masons or in the Pythians, but their focus is a lot on ritual and self-improvement as the
Mm.
primary purpose of why you're there. These are not people that feel like there's something wrong with them, aside
Mm.
from them feeling, disconnected from society. They can stay home and work on themselves. The fact they do that all the time. They're into self-help. They're into looking things up. They're into trying to solve their own problems. While they'll get something out of Freemasonry, for example, it's not going to fill the hole as much as going into an organization that its primary purpose is to have a sense of community and mutual benefit.
Okay, so yeah, but why would they feel at home? Don't think we're still there though. Why would they feel more at home in the Oddfellows? Would you say it's because the Oddfellows really don't judge you the way
Well, the
the other
Oddfellows don't
fraternal?
judge, and but see, the Oddfellows is it's an interesting organization because it has these different pieces of how it operates, and each of those pieces fits a different type of person. So if you are more extroverted and you like to be in leadership positions, there's something there for you. If you're more introverted and you like to work in the background, there's something there for you. If
Okay.
you are, if you have issues with sensory stuff, there's places that you can be, depending all the different ways in which the lodge operates. From from the things that you do before the meeting starts with
Oh,
refreshments or whatever else, running through all the meetings, through committees, through different roles that we have, different positions, ritualistic work, charitable work, all those different pieces fit different personality types. Really, nobody can do all of them well. Everybody has a different role to play. And we know that. And so when people come into a lodge, really, you gravitate towards what it is that you want to do, and everyone's happy that you've chosen to do that. And there's no pressure to say, oh, you haven't been coming to every meeting, or you're not speaking enough in meetings, or you don't want to go through the chairs, or you don't want to learn ritual work. None of that is an issue. In the Oddfellows, you enjoy the beauty of the lessons, but then move on and do other things.
and I think that core message though of Odd Fellowship of friendship, love, and truth. Like I said, there's no judgment in any of that. Like I said, there's no friendship, love, and truth. Whereas the Masons have a different type of messaging that
They
would
do. I mean, the Masons,
and of course other ones as well. They have a different type of messaging, but that core message of friendship, love, and truth, I think, really is part of what would be drawing people in.
yeah, I mean, the whole point of Odd Fellowship is that no one stands alone. One of our symbols is the bundle of sticks, which reminds you that a single stick, a single person, can be easily broken down. But if you bound together, you have a lot more strength. That's one of our symbols. And on the cover of the book, I have one of our other famous symbols, which is the heart and hand. The idea that you need to reach out and give love to other people. And it's an open hand, extending out to you the love from one brother to another or one person to another. And a reminder that it's not passive. Being an Oddfellow is not a passive thing. It's an
No.
active thing. You actively have to be friends. And friendship does not mean acquaintances. It
Yeah.
means real, actual connection, knowing what's going on in the other person's life, being for them, being for them who, when there's good times or in bad. And the same with the love, brotherly love. It's that is not um, just good feelings.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's being there at the hardest times when someone is really struggling, when they've had a spouse pass away or they've lost their job and they need someone who's going to just be able to be there and remind them that they still have value. And then the third one is truth. And that's not just, honesty. That's
Yeah.
also, you know, being real with people about what's going on in their life, what they need to work on, and understanding also that people can change, that what you did in your past does not define your entire future, so long as you're honest about where it has taken you and where you need to go.
Now, wouldn't you agree, though, that many of the other fraternal orders need to pick up on this concept if they want to keep going? Because you can't, you know what I mean? You know, in a world where we want to be all want to be more inclusive, wouldn't you agree that?
Well, I believe so. I would say so, and the research says it. This book is not just about the Oddfellows. It begins by explaining the basic premise of what's going on with the epidemic of loneliness and isolation that's facing the world, and the impact it has. It goes through a whole chapter of all of the different research in psychology and social psychology explaining what's going on here. The fact that the research shows that the damage to your body from being lonely has the same effect as being physically injured.
Mm.
That it really does damage people. And so even if it's not for the purpose of odd fellowship, what's in the book is, it's directed towards odd fellowship, but it works for any fraternal organization. If you can identify the people who need connection and need a purpose, then you can find them and be able to get them in. Now, it might be a little harder for the Masons because you got to ask to join, so they really can't go out recruiting. But they could also make themselves more known. They could have open houses where they have speakers come in and talk about issues that might be of interest to people who are, searching for connection.
Very true. And where does one buy your book, by the way?
Oh, easy enough to find. If you can spell my name, that's the hard part.
Yeah.
But you can go to Duminiak.com, and that's Delta Uniform Mike India November India Alpha Kilo.com. And you can find the book right there. And anything else that I've written that's published, which is a number of things, fiction, nonfiction, poetry, you name it.
And do you have any more plans to write any more books about Odd Fellowship or anything else?
I do. As a funny thing is my chaplain's guide, I worked with an Oddfellow publishing company that we have called Heart and Hand Institute. And they also have 3 more of my books that are not yet published, that they're working on and editing. One is a satirical history of Odd Fellowship that tries to get people to be learning about our actual history by joking about things that are not necessarily true about it. Another is a modern cookbook, which has scalable meals that deal with various dietary issues and things like that, so that way you can have effective meals and events that are inclusive without having to spend a bunch of money on caterers. And then the most recent one that I turned in to them is a book really taking the stuff that I talk about in Oddtistic and turning it into actions and how to implement the concepts that are in there and challenging lodges to make those changes.
Well, we appreciate you coming in tonight and talk about this your book there, Mr. Duminiak, and all the best to you and all the best in your work with Odd Fellowship.
Well, thank you very much, and thanks for having me.
Well, it's been a while. It was wonderful having Mr. Duminiak back here. I haven't, right, I will say this as well, that this was part of a much larger conversation that I had with Brother Duminiak. You will see the rest of that where he talks about the Patriarchs Militant. He refreshes our memories on the Patriarchs Militant. You'll see that part of the conversation next year in 2026. But for now, I've decided to bring you this about his book. And, I love interviewing book authors. I really do. Right? But I will say this. I've interviewed Masonic book authors. And, of course, our old friend Owen Snowden there. I've interviewed him about the RAOB and the books he's written about them. but this is my first Oddfellows book author. So this is really a first here on Points of Light Radio. I like that. Another first, right? And I will say this, the theme for 2025, if you recall, was growth. And this is a sign of renewed growth and maturity within the Oddfellows, that they are actually, now they've got members writing books about, about their accomplishments and so on. I love this. I hope this continues, right? And I will say this, that a lot of what I saw here in Oddtistic, this book here, about the Oddfellows really reaching out to the marginalized, to those who, feel left out of society, doesn't really surprise me, given, like he talked about, their history of being formed by people who did not fit, by men who did not fit into any of the old, shall we say, fraternities like Oddfellows, like Freemasons and Free Gardeners and so on, right? These were men who did not hold any of those occupations and needed a place to go and a place where they could be looked after and fellowship, right? But also, if you look at the February 20th, 2023 segment of Points of Light Radio, this is just second nature to Oddfellows. If you look at it, because there, in that particular segment, the February 2023 segment of Points of Light Radio, I actually spoke to someone from Vancouver, British Columbia, an Oddfellows Lodge in Vancouver, British Columbia, and how they were opening up their lodge to give shelter and comfort to the homeless population in that area of Vancouver that they were in. I love that. That is fraternalism, as I keep saying this, in action. That's what you saw in the book Oddtistic. Fraternalism in action, right? Bringing people in, not judging, and so on, and being that comfort for them, right? Especially in these turbulent times. Let's remember to kind of open up our organizations a little bit, right? And but I'll leave it there for now, brothers and sisters. Before I go, I want to remind you that this podcast is available on both YouTube and Spreaker. Please share, like, and subscribe when viewing Points of Light Radio on YouTube. I also welcome your comments and input. You can see the link to my PayPal in the details section of this segment. You can hit on that PayPal link, make a voluntary donation to the podcast. We will use that to move Points of Light Radio forward. My Facebook handle is at facebook.com/Points of Light Radio. My Twitter handle is at POLightRadio. My Bluesky handle is at POLightRadio.bsky.social. You can see the link to my Spotify channel, as well as my Points of Light Radio store. Brothers and sisters, let's keep our fraternal orders in action. And until we meet again, just step into the light.